Welcome back. Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Great to have on the show. She precedes me each night here, and I was on her program earlier tonight. She's always very kind to let me come on and talk to her great listeners. And when I a couple times I filled in for her, she has just unbelievable great response and callers and all. So Andrea Kaye, the great Andrea Kaye Show, and she's with us. And I was telling her off the air, and you should do this too. She's really good on Facebook. Some people are good on Twitter. If you're good on Twitter, you're usually like a half a lunatic because you just have to like yell at someone and step back and then yell again. And on Facebook, it's more likely you put up things that you're like, what about that? And so Andrea Kaye earlier today on Twitter posted, and she wrote this. She wrote, "Roberts screws Americans again. George W. Bush's legacy, a liberal wolf in conservative wool." And she's referring, of course, as we mentioned earlier, the Supreme Court ruled, if you can believe it, 4 liberals versus 4 conservatives. And now they're about to decide to strike down or to uphold an abortion law that allowed limitations on abortion so that there's doctor's privileges within miles of where an abortion takes place. Seems like it's good for the mother, good for the baby. Well, the King of America, Chief Justice John Roberts, has said he's going to he's going to concur with the liberals on the opinion, write his own mealy-mouthed junk, and here we are, basically 5-4 liberals versus conservatives. So, Andrew, that's a long warm-up. Welcome back to the program. How are you today?
Well, I'm great. I'm glad to be here with you. Always super fun to be, even when we're talking about a crappy topic like this. I have so much fun being on with my brother Ed Martin, and yeah, I'm super excited that every night that I get to lead into you, I get to be the lead, and I get to be the opening act, right?
I don't know about that.
Yeah. Listen, you're the
that,
attorney. But... Yeah. When it comes to this story, I'm not an attorney. I can't analyze this to the breadth that you can from a legal standpoint, but I can look at it from a common sense standpoint. First and foremost, we can say that one of the things that Roberts did today was he proved that that abortion never was and never will be about health care for women. Okay, because you can't argue that this is about health care for women when you don't give a crap whether or not the dude performing the abortion is up to snuff enough to be admitted and have admission rights to a hospital. Okay, so there will be women, in addition to children being murdered in this procedure, there will be women that will lose their lives in this. So congratulations to John Roberts for proving our point that abortion was never about health care. There are many today that are saying that this was never going to be, when it comes to Roe v. Wade, that this is a step to it being ultimately decided as a matter of law, and that conservatives who are looking for that to happen shouldn't read that today means that Roe v. Wade will never be reviewed again as a matter of law. I don't like that kind of rose-colored, lens put on this. This was a major loss for those of us who care about life in this country, for those of us who care about the culture war, for those of us who understand that Roe v. Wade was always about devaluing life, and if they could get Americans to devalue life, if they could get Americans to throw God under the bus to this degree, how far could they take our culture? And we see that playing out today. And shame on George W. Bush for being the one that put Roberts on the bench.
Well, and let's talk about this for a minute. I mean, at this point, if you had to, I wish it was the other way, but if you had to be President Trump, you look at it and you say, okay, my 2 guys went with the conservatives. The W guy went there. I mean, we're still dealing with Afghanistan war stories because even though Trump's pulled back some of the soldiers, hasn't pulled them all back. And of course, the economy, China thing, all the Democrats and Republicans roll over China. It does make a pretty good argument if you're Trump. You say, that's why I ran and won, because we got to get rid of these swamp creatures. I mean, Roberts' defenders make arguments about how he's making a nuanced decision to protect the integrity of the court. I mean, come on. At this point, the court sanctioned murder of babies. And but back to my broader point, which I think you alluded to. George W. Bush's legacy, as my wife said this morning, he was a terrible president. I mean, we can all sort of agree with that now, can't we?
Well, I would hope so. I actually was off George W. Bush around 2006, to be honest with you, because it was clear to me then that he auditioned, he campaigned as a conservative and was governing as his compassionate conservatism was nothing but phony liberalism. He was the architect of exploding government and expanding government, and we're suffering today as a result of it. He was an appeaser to the Islamist movement. his compassionate conservatism, as we see now with John Roberts, is the perfect example of he was a liberal wolf in sheep's clothing. And so, I too many conservatives defended George W. Bush for too long. And you look at not just this decision, but what Roberts did with DACA recently. But what he did with the census was the same thing he did with DACA. Right. They're sitting up there evaluating what the Trump administration did on the basis of process versus law. I mean, the legislating from the bench is out of control. A couple of points that Trump is already campaigning that even before this decision today about how important it is that he stay in office and put justices on the bench. But it's also should be a reminder to us that we can't rely on the Supreme Court to solve the issues. We've got to be voting at every level, up and down. When we go to vote, it can't be just about voting for president. We've got to be paying attention to who's running for office at every state and local level, including judges.
It's exactly right. And in fact, I had a friend of mine who's an immigrant to this country, and he loves America now. And he wrote me, and he said, I'm legitimately confused. He said, if the Supreme Court's not supposed to make this call, who is? This was last week about the Title VII, a few weeks ago now. And I said the legislatures are, right. The legislature's supposed to fight it out. In fact, the example, of course, is that in the case of Title VII, the Congress didn't pass the change that the court then did. In this case, you have two states. Texas tried it first, and they got struck down. The Louisiana case is up to the Supreme Court, and would have had the effect had it been ruled correctly to do this. And my point here is let the states, let the legislatures get the space they want to do. But more importantly, you said it. We can't be ruled by these guys in robes, right? I mean, this is not the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to be the weakest branch, not the strongest branch. They're supposed to be a check, not a legislature. And I guess the question is, will conservatives actually demand it? Josh Hawley gave a speech 10 days ago, powerful on this topic, but most of the time, Republicans in the Senate and House just kind of go along with the system.
Well, absolutely. I mean, where's the outrage today? Where was the outrage from the Republican Party with what John Roberts did recently with DACA? Let's talk about the Title VII thing. You're the attorney here. Like I said earlier, I don't really know Title VII and this language and that language, but I know in 1960 whatever they weren't thinking about transgenders and the RuPaul drag queen show when protections for sex in the workplace was written. So, they are flat out legislate. They are joining this culture war that we have in place in this country, and they're on the wrong side of it. And there's very little pushback from the Republican Party and the culture war as it's playing out in the court, as it's playing out in cities and states across the country, from the George Floyd deaths there with the Black Lives Matter movement, and they're not pushing back on the shutdowns and the gross overreach of governments after coronavirus. Republicans, where's the fine?
Right. We're talking with Andrea Kaye, the great Andrea Kaye. The Andrea Kaye Show is right before my show. You need to listen to it and follow her, especially on Facebook. All right, Andrea, what are you going to do? I mean, this is serious. What are you going to do if college football continues to be tortured by the coverage / the corona? Did LSU get a bunch of guys sick? Is that what I read?
What? No, child. When you grow up eating off the land, you grow up eating out of the swamp. Your immune system is a little bit tougher than the Rona. Okay, child.
All right.
So, but clearly, I think there's a movement on the part of Roll Tide and Florida and other SEC teams to try to shut down this upcoming season because they don't want a redo from a man, Ed Orgeron, out of LSU.
There it is. That's what it is. I looked under the hood, and that Fauci guy has an Alabama sticker, and then that Burks lady I think she's an Ohio State person. I can see exactly what's going on there. It's a conspiracy to stop the LSU juggernaut. I hadn't thought of that until you just enlightened me. All right, Andrea Kaye, as always, thank you for being on the program, for all you do for us. TheAnswerSanDiego.com. Check her stuff out there and follow her and listen to her program. We'll talk again soon. Thanks, Andrea.
Thanks, Ed. Have a good one.
You too. We'll take a quick break and be right back. It's Ed Martin here on the Pro America Report. Be back in a moment.